This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. I'm doing this for your own good, and for everyone's good, Shui said with a gloomy face. The other people also glanced at the fat boy and continued to walk forward in silence. The cyclone in Yunxiao's dantian stirred, and the seal disappeared like a bubble. A strange look gradually appeared on his face, because he found that, apart from himself, 2 of the 4 people who had been sealed had also opened their seals. One was fat and round, the other was a cold-faced woman in palace clothes. Only the wretched man with the goatee was the most ordinary, and no aura could be detected at all. The fat and round and the woman in the palace dress didn't know that they had been exposed. They pretended to be sealed and the 5 of them quickly moved forward in the mountain. Soon, he saw a row of small courtyards. There were already many people living inside. There were also a few people who looked like Big Dipper sect disciples guarding outside. "We'll be staying here today," Shui explained. Yunxiao frowned. "Live here? Isn't the competition starting today?" Shui smiled. "Indeed, but today is only the most basic drawing of lots and qualification assessment. There's still the top 50 outer tournament. Because there are more people, it's more chaotic. So, there won't be any visitors on the first day. Tomorrow would be the advancement of 50 to 20, and the last day would be the most exciting advancement of 20 to 10. At the same time, all the local forces and major chamber of commerces would be invited to watch. At that time, all the influential figures in South Fire City will appear." Yunxiao was not interested in watching these disciples compete. He just wanted to see if Mei Dong could squeeze into the top 3. In that case, it would be good for him to find a place to settle down and cultivate quietly. He would go and watch on the 3rd day. Shui had already greeted the Big Dipper sect disciple who was maintaining order and safety at the entrance. The Big Dipper sect disciple pointed inside, which seemed to be a corner of the row of small courtyards. Shui led the 4 of them straight to a small courtyard in the corner. Along the way, they passed by a few corridors where many cultivators were chatting and laughing inside, looking at the 4 of them with interest. It was discovered that almost half of the people inside had their cultivation sealed. They were basically silent, afraid that they would be at a disadvantage if they caused trouble. As for those who weren't sealed, each and every one of them was extraordinarily proud, showing that they had received special treatment. Try to keep a low profile here. Otherwise, your cultivation will be sealed, and it's very likely that you'll lose your lives. Shui carefully warned. The goateed man's expression changed, and he said, "Aren't there people from the Big Dipper sect maintaining order? Who would dare to make a move here? You guys saw it too. The only ones maintaining order are the few Wuzong disciples at the entrance. Their abilities are limited, so you have to be careful," Shui said in a low voice. "This buy-in?" The goateed man was stunned. He seemed to feel extremely uncomfortable. When he thought about how his cultivation was sealed and how he was surrounded by cold gazes, he couldn't help but feel like a sheep walking into a tiger's mouth. The fat and round earth and the cold-faced woman in palace attire didn't have much expression. The 2 of them had long since been unsealed. This should be the place. Shui took a look at the entrance of the courtyard. It was indeed a little old and broken. In this place, he couldn't care much and walked straight in. As soon as he stepped in, his expression changed drastically. A strong wind shot out from inside and turned into a sharp palm shadow that slapped down directly, accompanied by a cold shout, "Who are you? Get lost." Shui was shocked and hurriedly struck out with his right palm. Powerful yuan qi condensed into a palm in the air and kept compressing. Boom. 2 palm shadows, one big and one small, collided in the air. The strong wind was sent flying in all directions. Some of the trees in the courtyard were instantly shattered, and even the courtyard gate was completely blown off. Shui didn't gain the upper hand from that palm and was actually at a slight disadvantage, which made him feel uncertain. He was a peak 6 stars martial grandmaster, while the other party's cultivation was at least 7 stars, or even higher. The huge tremor immediately attracted the surrounding martial artists. Dozens of light beams shot over and all of them stood in the air not far away, watching the show with ridicule. As for those who were sealed, they wanted to come forward to take a look, but they were afraid of bringing disaster to themselves, so they hesitated for a moment. Wei's face was full of anger as he shouted, "Who are you? This courtyard was given to us by the Big Dipper sect." A faint voice came from inside, "Oh? We thought that no one was living there, but since we're already living there, you guys can move." "What? You're going too far." Wei was furious. Although he didn't want to cause trouble, the other party didn't give him any face at all. In front of so many cultivators, he was considered a respected man in Southfire City. How could he pull down his face? At this time, the Big Dipper sect disciples were also alarmed and flew over from a distance. The young man in the lead shouted, "What's the matter? How dare you attack in the Big Dipper sect?" After Wei explained the whole story, the disciples shouted into the courtyard, "Who are you? Why aren't you staying at the designated place?" A voice came from inside, "The designated place is too small for so many of us, so we found another room. You can ask them to find another place." The surrounding people were all stunned and secretly guessed who these people were. They actually dared to order the disciples of the Big Dipper sect to do things. They were truly extremely arrogant. One had to know that those who were arranged to stay in these places were basically itinerant cultivators. Those who had sects backing them were all in other delicate and elegant places. They were all very respectful to the Big Dipper sect and didn't dare to disobey. Not only did these people snatch their territory, but they also asked them to leave. They were truly audacious. The disciple's expression changed slightly as he exclaimed, "It's you guys." He suddenly revealed a difficult expression. Wei's heart clenched as well. He seemed to have sensed something amiss when he saw the Big Dipper sect disciple's expression. As expected, the disciple quickly regained his composure. He looked coldly at Wei and the other four and said, "We're all here to watch the Big Dipper sect's competition. Be modest to each other and don't cause trouble, understand?" Without waiting for Wei's reply, he gave a look to the other disciples and left with a wave of his hand. This buy-in. All of a sudden, everyone was stunned. How could there be such a way to solve the problem? This was equivalent to not solving it. Once they left, they would continue to fight. Wei was also dumbfounded. He stood there and looked into the small courtyard. He began to ponder, as if he was a little afraid of the identity of the person inside. The goateed perverted man saw that he was surrounded by people and looked at him from afar. He felt uncomfortable and said, "Let's go to another place." "Exchange?" Yunxiao said coldly. "Now that everyone thinks we're easy to bully, where should we go? I'm afraid I can't change anywhere. If you show weakness, everyone will step on your head and shit on it." Wei's heart trembled as he gave Yunxiao a surprised look. His eyes flickered as he cracked his knuckles and said in a deep voice, "Not bad. If you take a step back, you won't be able to move forward." At this moment, he suddenly had a realization. The shackles of the 6 Stars Martial Grandmaster seemed to be shaking. Wei was shocked. He didn't think that he would feel like breaking through just because of a sentence from this kid. He suddenly took out an elixir that exuded an extremely strong spiritual qi and swallowed it in one gulp under the watchful eyes of the crowd. Suddenly, the bottleneck that had been holding him back for several years was finally broken through in one breath. The light of advancement was faintly emitted from his body, causing the people around him to exclaim in surprise and reveal looks of envy, jealousy, and hatred. Wei finally understood. After struggling in Southfire City for so many years, he had become more and more protective of his life. His fighting spirit had long been worn away. No wonder he had been doing nothing all these years. If he were to back down now, he would be stuck at the 6 Stars Martial Grandmaster level for the rest of his life. After he rushed into the 7-star realm, he suddenly felt that the front was flat, and the wide road of martial arts opened up. Since the disciples of the Big Dipper sect don't care, don't blame me for being impolite. Wei shouted into the courtyard. His personality had completely changed. He didn't even address the people of the Big Dipper sect as respectfully as he did before. A sneer came from the small courtyard, "You've just broken through to 1 star and you're already overestimating yourself. On account of your ignorance, you better leave now, or you'll lose your life for nothing." A cold smile flashed across Shouwei's face as he strode into the courtyard. "You're looking for death." The people in the courtyard were instantly enraged when they saw that he did not listen to their advice. With a loud shout, the door was smashed open with a bang. A gray figure rose into the air, and vital chi churned around his body. Then, he struck down with his palm like a tsunami. A peak 7 stars martial grandmaster. Yunxiao narrowed his eyes as he saw through the man's strength. He naturally didn't care about this level of cultivation, but Shouwei had just broken through to 7 stars. It was still a little difficult for him to receive this palm. When Shouwei felt the wave-like pressure, he immediately understood that this person's cultivation was above his. His face turned ashen and he hurriedly gathered all his yuan qi under his palms. Immediately, his palms were like red-hot iron, causing the surrounding air to be heated to the point of white smoke. Red meteorite iron palm. 2 large red palm imprints slapped out in front of him, and the 4 palms immediately collided. The strong wind was suppressed to the point that it let out an ear-piercing sound, like countless birds being strangled and crying miserably. An invisible yuan qi spirit pressure was formed, pressing down on Shouwei's iron palm until it gradually lost its red color and turned green. Shouwei's legs were directly jolted into the ground, sinking into his knees. The current situation was like riding a tiger and not getting off. He could not escape even if he wanted to. He could only struggle to hold on. However, he had just entered the 7-star realm. There was still a big gap between him and the other party's 7-star expert. He did not know how long he could hold on for. The outcome was very bad. Moreover, there seemed to be more than one person in the small courtyard. There seemed to be an accomplice. The center of Shouwei's palm began to crack, and many of his acupuncture points also began to bleed. If there was no other way to resolve it, he could only be shaken to death by the other party. The gray-robed man who struck down from the sky had already circulated his yuan qi to the extreme. He was only half a star stronger than Shouwei. Although he had the upper hand, it wasn't easy for him either. His forehead was full of sweat, and his eyes were filled with cruelty. Yunxiao's expression did not change. He could tell that Shouwei could not hold on any longer, and he would explode and die if this went on. A fire cloud gradually appeared between his eyebrows and flashed by. The gray-robed man, who was circulating his vital qi with all his might to suppress the pressure, suddenly let out a blood-curdling screech. His entire body rapidly turned black, and the power on his palms disintegrated in an instant. Shouwei's iron palms suddenly exploded, and the air that was originally compressed to the extreme exploded, sending him flying in an instant. Everyone saw the gray-robed man's body suddenly turn black, and then blood sprinkled down from the air. He was shaken back into the small courtyard, and he screamed repeatedly. Shouwei was overjoyed that he was saved, but he felt strange inside. He didn't understand why the other would suddenly go crazy. Was it the backlash of the cultivation method? The man in the gray robe was rolling around in the courtyard. There were more and more black burns on his body, as if he had been burned dry. He was in great pain. At this moment, 3 more people flew out of the room. One of the men helped the gray-robed man up and fed him a pill. He said in surprise, "What a powerful fire elemental power." He took out a piece of ice soul and put it into the gray-robed man's hand. What made them feel a chill was that the moment the ice soul touched their hands, it turned into a pool of boiling water and gave off hot air. This is the ice soul from the 10,000-year-old ice at the bottom of the East Sea. One of them was extremely shocked and his eyes were filled with disbelief. The man in gray's body melted as soon as it touched his hand, but his injuries gradually stabilized. Most of his body had been carbonized. At this time, the elixir also began to take effect, and the pain gradually subsided. One of the men turned around and stared at Shouwei's hands coldly. He said, "What a vicious martial skill, it's really hidden." Wei was stunned for a moment and immediately understood that this person had misunderstood. He was also very curious as to who had saved him so silently that no one seemed to have noticed. But he naturally wouldn't expose her, and only coldly snorted, "You asked for it." The man's expression changed slightly, but he seemed to be afraid. "Since that's the case, then I'd like to see your excellency's brilliant moves." He took a step forward and arrived in front of Wei. The other two men followed suit. The three of them formed a formation of 3 talents and surrounded Wei. The aura they exuded was above that of Wei, but they were afraid and didn't dare to make a move. Wei's heart clenched and he immediately broke out in cold sweat. He thought that if that expert had not acted, he would have been finished. His face was still filled with anger as he shouted, "Do you want to join forces?" It seemed that this group of people would not stop until a few of them were killed. Just now, he had only condensed an illusionary image of the true phoenix fire and burned it lightly. If he had condensed real fire, with the power of the grey-robed man's 7 stars martial grandmaster, he would have been turned into ashes in an instant. There was no possibility of survival. He was thinking about what he should do now. If he were to make a move, it would be too conspicuous. His eyes immediately fell on the fat and round girl and the cold-faced woman. The two of them had been watching coldly and calmly. Even when Wei couldn't hold on any longer, he didn't take any action. They were too cold. A smile appeared in his eyes as he had an idea. "I want to see what kind of existence that hidden fire element of yours is. If your strength can be recognized by me, I won't hold you accountable for your previous crimes. Perhaps I can even give you a chance to join us," the man said in a deep voice. As soon as he finished speaking, he flipped his right hand over, and a dragon-shaped yellow sand rolled up and circled around his body. The area became larger and larger, and the yellow sand filled the sky. His body actually became a little dazed. This person had also mastered the power of elements, and he had been suppressing his cultivation to the best of his ability. He did not want to reveal it under such circumstances. The yellow sand gradually spread and condensed, forming a dozen small snakes in the air. They flicked their tongues at Wei, looking very intelligent. Yunxiao was surprised. He did not expect this man to have such a trick. Each of the snakes had the strength of a 9 stars martial grandmaster, and they completely suppressed Wei. Wei lost all color in an instant. He had originally wanted to fight to the death, but now, the little snakes that the other party had transformed into were definitely suppressing him. It was like hitting a rock with an egg, with no chance of winning. The other cultivators who were watching from afar also revealed shocked and solemn expressions. This man's strength clearly exceeded their expectations. From this move alone, he was at least a martial emperor. No matter how strong Wei was, he couldn't challenge someone 1 realm above him. "Don't worry, just use your elemental power. As long as you can enter my eyes, you will be fine. Otherwise, woo-woo." The man suddenly stopped talking. Obviously, those who didn't catch his eyes were finished. He raised his hand high and his 5 fingers clawed down. At this moment, the little snake suddenly straightened up, and a fierce light burst out from its eyes. "Go," the man said as he pointed his 5 fingers. Whoosh! More than 10 earth and sand snakes flew down one after another. Each of them was equivalent to a 9 stars martial grandmaster. Wei's eyes were filled with despair and bitterness. He didn't expect that he would die so tragically here after breaking through the shackles that he had been stuck in for so many years. Suddenly, Yunxiao's eyes narrowed as he said, "Form shift." A powerful energy shot out from his eyes, and the space distorted. The fat ball and the cold-faced woman were suddenly sucked into the distorted space, appearing in front of Wei in the next moment. This buy-in. The round-faced man and the cold-faced woman in the palace dress were watching the fight in the air with full attention. Suddenly, they felt a strong mental power fluctuation. Before they could react, they only felt a wave of dizziness. They immediately saw more than 10 sand snakes coming down from the air. Each of them was a 9th rank martial grandmaster. The two of them were scared out of their wits at the same time. They didn't care what was going on and exploded their vital chi. Two powerful forces spread out from their bodies and attacked at the same time from the left and right of Shui. This time, not only the two of them were baffled, but everyone's eyes were wide open. No one actually saw how they came over. The man's pupils suddenly shrank and he revealed a shocked expression. He cried out, "Form shifting?" The other two companions were also shocked. They hurriedly made preparations to attack and were completely on guard. A few glass-like balls appeared in the fat ball's hand. He held them between his fingers, and they emitted the power of thunder and lightning. He waved his fists and threw them out, one faster than the other. The lightning balls were shot out one by one, and the power of thunder and lightning connected each other. Soon, a powerful electric net was formed, and it was thrown at the sand snakes. Bang bang bang. The earth sand snakes that hit the electric net exploded one by one, turning into yellow sand. The power of the electric net gradually weakened. The cold-faced woman immediately calmed down after her panic. She took out an exquisite jade green folding fan and gently opened it. Immediately, a green aura gushed out. With a soft cry, the folding fan immediately unsealed and turned into a huge fan nearly 2 meters long. She grabbed it with both hands and fanned it with all her might. An invisible gust of wind swept out from the fan, and the earth snakes exploded like firecrackers. The woman coldly snorted and waved her long fan again, blowing away all the sand in the sky. While everyone was in shock, the two of them stood quietly on the left and right of Shui, just like his guards. Shui was stunned for a moment, then he was overjoyed. He cupped his fists and said, "So the two of you were hiding your true strength. Thank you for saving my life. And thank you for that attack earlier." The fat and round earthman and the cold-faced woman in the palace dress looked at each other and saw the bitterness and helplessness in each other's eyes, as well as a trace of fear and dread. The two of them sneaked a glance behind them, where Yunxiao and the goateed man were standing. The two of them were certain that one of them had teleported them up here. This kind of form-shifting technique could only be performed by those unattainable great alchemists. Their bewildered gazes were mostly focused on the goateed wretched man, because he was the biggest suspect. As for the goateed man, he mumbled to himself in fear, "What's going on? Didn't they seal their powers? No wonder you dare to challenge us. Who are you? What are you doing in the Big Dipper sect?" The man who had used the earth element martial skill shouted with a gloomy face. These two men were able to break his martial skill so easily, which meant that they were at least martial emperors. At this time, the fat guy had no choice but to step forward and snorted coldly, "Since you've come to the Big Dipper sect, you're naturally here to watch the sect competition. Are you not?" The man was stunned for a moment, then he sneered, "Of course we are, but it's very suspicious if you are." The cold-faced woman also said in a cold voice, "Why are you talking so much nonsense? Take your people and get lost. Otherwise, don't blame us for being impolite." The man's face turned ugly. With their current strength, they couldn't gain any advantage, and his people had left for the time being. If they continued to fight, they would suffer a big loss. He immediately snorted, "Good. I'll let you have this place for the time being. Let's see if you have the ability to stay here." He was obviously the leader of these people. With a wave of his hand, the other two people looked at each other and then landed in the small courtyard to help their companion who had been more than half carbonized. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, they left dejectedly. The entire courtyard was very wide, and the four of them could be seen landing in a huge house in the distance. Shui's eyes revealed a look of worry. Although the people gathered here were all rogue cultivators, they were treated differently. The place where the few of them had landed was the largest courtyard in the area. There had even been a martial supreme level rogue cultivator who had lived there. However, he couldn't care less about this now. He hurriedly stepped forward and bowed deeply to the fat and cold-faced woman in the palace dress, thanking them, "Thank you for your help.